Hi everybody, it's Carolyn Brown here. I'm the co-founder of Career Care Package. Nish will be joining us very shortly, I hope. He's just been caught up, but he said, let's just jump in and get on with the show. So today it's episode 191, and we're going to be talking about how to get over victimhood, but essentially how to turn your life around. And delighted to have Marcia Teperman here, a success, wellbeing and strengths coach, I believe. Have I got that right, Marcia?
Marcia.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm a success and well-being and success coach. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm terribly sorry to get your name wrong and all of the fluster of kind of going live and that type of thing. But Marcia, tell us about the work that you actually do with your clients and how you support them.
Okay, so my clients usually come to me when they are not satisfied with their professional life. They're not feeling fulfilled. The work isn't something that they're taking a lot of pleasure in. They might be feeling like they want to step into a leadership role and they lack that confidence to step into a leadership role. So they don't have the clarity as to what they want to do. So they want a career change, or they want more clarity around being more efficient in their business, so that they can be better leaders, because often entrepreneurs and solo entrepreneurs also take a lot of the things that they're not good at doing, and they're doing everything, and what happens is that really hinders the growth of their business. So when they are at that point where they either want to do a different job, or they want to have clarity of their strengths, or where their time is best invested, what might be on the way of their business growing, that's when they come to me. And what we do is we get the clarity and the confidence, and help them step up into the leaders that they can be, become, really own their value and their contribution in the workplace, and then become more impactful and be able to contribute more at a higher level.
Yeah.
Hello.
And welcome. Yeah, you made it. So it's a funny thing, like a strengths-based approach. I was just talking to a friend today, and we so rarely as individuals get a lot of sort of positive reinforcement about the things that we're good at. And he was talking about an exercise that they do daily in their work, which is they write up, they do a gratitude exercise. So they write up things that have gone well for them and then gather feedback from each other around the positive things that they've done. And I mean, I think about my times in the workplace and I think, gosh, that was missing, and what a gift it is to constantly reinforce that. So do you find that people come when they absolutely need your help, or are they sort of more proactively investing in something as well?
Usually my clients they are seekers of support and self-help, at least. So they are, looking through reading books, listening to podcasts, and just doing like a lot of things, trying to find a way. But what they realize is that they can't really see behind their eyeballs, so to speak. So the blind spots, and and also, like, a lot of people have this. A lot of people they're so humble that they are unable to actually recognize the successes. And so sometimes we need a little bit of investigation to be able to point, in their professional trajectory, where the successes were and what they did well and what derived a lot of satisfaction in their work and so on. So having a coach to really look into those blind spots, and to really help them embody that confidence is really important. So that's something that a lot of people struggle. And let's face it, a lot of the high performers, successful people in the world, they have coaches all the time. They go from one coach or one mentor to another mentor. So, I currently have a couple of mentors that I work with, and I don't think I will ever not have one. I might not have one for a period of time, so that I can come back to my own self-assurance, to my own inner guidance. But I will then seek someone who can stretch me further. Yeah. So that's when they come to me.
So how did you come to be doing this work?
Well, I guess having lived through some turning points myself, both in being, growing up with a mom that had a mental illness, trying to navigate, childhood with a lot of instability. It was one way, and I think that made me a very strong person, because early in life I understood that I had to somehow take care of myself. And try to understand people, because as a child you try to understand your parents when they're not giving you what you you hoped you could get from them. And so I always had this curiosity about trying to understand what my mom was experiencing. And it was only when I entered the community services sector that I really gained a deep insight into what mental illness really is, and how unequipped a parent with borderline personality disorder is to take care, and be a steady source of stability for a child. So I guess that's one thing. And then I had my car accident many years ago, that I was left with some serious injuries, and I had to really connect to the gratitude piece of what was possible for me and how I was going to turn that situation around. And that's kind of why I called my methodology turnaround, because the turnaround method, because it's really about looking ahead and making the best of what we have. And then further to that, I also moved countries a couple of times. So I moved from Brazil to Israel for 20 months. And then I came here to Australia pregnant with a baby, like I was, 4 months pregnant when I arrived, and then had to rebuild my life again. So, and then divorce and all of that. So navigating through those changes, and looking at the opportunity to make it better each time. So to not say, oh my God, now I am divorced, I'm single mom with 2 children. At the time, my youngest was not 3 yet, and my oldest was 8. So I could have made of that situation, a big deal and go in the wrong direction. But what I had at the time was on welfare payments, because my son was under 8. So, and my income was low. I had a variable income at the time as a Pilates instructor. And what I had set as a goal was that I was going to replace my welfare payment and supplement so that I could have a good life by the time my son was 6. And I remember the day that I walked into Centrelink and I let them know that I no longer needed, the support, and that I was done with it. So it was being deliberate and intentional about my next steps, looking ahead and looking at the opportunities, looking at the risks, looking, what happens if we don't take action? Sometimes it's a question that we don't ask ourselves. Like we look at the difficulties in taking action, but we fail to look at what are the risks of not taking action. So through all of this, and then I started my training in. My first coaching certification was in 2013. Actually, it was an NLP master practitioner that I did in 2013. Then I did a number of other certifications, and I am a trauma trained coach. So I am confident working with people who have, like myself, had suffered trauma, not necessarily big ones like car accidents or sexual abuse or anything like that. Some minor traumas, like sometimes as a child you are overwhelmed with the things around you and how people want you to show up and behave, and when you're not seen or accepted or validated in your own feelings as a child. And that can lead to a lot of trauma that we are not aware, and that can hinder our success. So that's a part of my piece that I think differentiates myself from many career coaches, is that I really work with trauma, including workplace trauma, because I have clients who had suffered a bullying in the workplace, and who had carried that beyond that experience and make a lot of meanings about themselves, and really hindered that confidence.
Sounds like an absolute gift.
Yes, I guess this is the best gift I can share with people. That's all I can say. Yeah, so it is really my purpose to coach people. And I think, looking back through my trajectory of changing, of finding another career, finding a place where I could, rely on a steady income. It was part of my own journey so that I can help other people as well. Because I've been always driven to be an entrepreneur. I had, businesses in the past. I closed one, I failed one, I sold one. So, I had like this experience and exposure to business as well. But I think that the career path was part of my purpose to help people identify what their purpose is and what is that career path that's going to give them the most amount of fulfillment. And that is also going to be a place where they can own their contribution to the place that they go to. That they don't need to come in that subordination status, if you want, where, you're always looking at your employer as like, of course, we should be grateful for having a job, but I think the workplaces should be equally grateful for having, people that are skilled, that are that are driven, that are contributors, that can make a difference in the workplace. So that's the people that want to work with me. They want to make an impact. They have this calling for something bigger, and they call to something bigger, and they want to know what that is.
Excellent. So, Marcia, welcome. My sincere apologies. I was running late from another, Zoom meeting. I think we share one thing common, that we both are migrants to Australia. But you've migrated twice, so you have changed countries for your living two times. Tell us about the difference that you had coming to, going to Israel, living in Israel, and here, and in a work wise. What are some of the challenges that you experienced, and what would be your advice to still the migrants who are still out there, who are still, it is still difficult for them to find the footing, on the ground, be it economical footing or be it a social footing. Share some of those experiences with us.
Of course. So first, I moved to Israel, and when I moved to Israel, I was a personal trainer. And when I arrived, I was studying Hebrew 5 days a week. And at the time, there were a lot of Russian migrants. I don't know if you remember a time when Israel opened for like a lot of Russians came, and they were highly qualified people, but they were the belief that was predominant amongst them is that it was really hard to find employment. And it was something that I really had to shield myself from, because I felt so positive, I was feeling like so enthusiastic, and I came with all this confidence. And what happened was that I was really lucky, because I've been offered an interview with the military attaché in the Brazilian embassy. And I was like, I had experience in hospitality. I had worked for family business, and so I knew administration, and I had, I was a very proactive person, so I wasn't afraid of the role, but I didn't really think I was going to make it. And surprisingly, because he was a military person, he thought that physical education and had a lot to do with the way that the military, style of doing things is, like the discipline, the hygiene, all of those principles were very, the values, I guess, were very similar. And he hired me. And I got, just like 3-4 months after I arrived, I ended up becoming the executive assistant, the personal assistant to the military attaché in the embassy. And I had to speak, English and Hebrew. And lucky to me, I had some English, because I was, and it did research, but my pronunciation wasn't great. And I had Hebrew because I went to school. I'm a Jewish person, and I went to a Jewish school. So I had some Hebrew, but I was also studying. So I landed on this really great job. But, I could have said no to that because I could have been intimidated by something completely different. And I also thought not even consider that as a possibility and just say no to that. But I went with curiosity and just going, yeah, I'm just going to put my best foot forward. And I got that. And I ended up also approaching a cardiac rehabilitation center because my background in exercise physiology meant that I had a lot of experience with that. So I just knocked on that door and I brought my curriculum and I said, would you have me as part of your staff? And they are like, yeah, we're looking for someone like you. So, that, I guess that putting your best foot forward and also knocking on doors, I think it's something that is really important. And I know that, anyone who works in the career space would confirm that that's the case. Have your resume, knock on doors, and you're more likely to build rapport with someone if you show up than if you send a file on an email. So that's the first thing. Then the transition here to Australia wasn't as smooth for me because when I arrived, I was pregnant. I had my son was born. When I tried my first interview, I went against a local person and who had a lot of experience as well. So I don't think that I made a meaning that I wasn't going to get any jobs from that experience, but I decided that I had enough experience in the exercise field and I had the qualifications, and I decided I wanted to open a Pilates studio at the time. So that's what I did. I ended up skipping the employment, the search. But when I then wanted to change jobs, that was interesting because I applied for 30 jobs and I didn't get one reply at the time. And yes, none of those jobs were exciting to me, none of them. So I don't know if it's a coincidence because I really believe in us being really clear and having clear expectations of what we really, really want. And I believe, in the right opportunity for the right person and synchronicities as well. But one thing that I know it helped me was that I had experience volunteering. So I volunteered as the marketing and media officer for the Pilates Alliance of Australasia for 2 years. And having that experience was valuable for the interviews that I had, for all the interviews that I had, because I could go back to, all the questions. I could show my achievements, I could show my results, I could speak to situations, all the situational questions. I had things to talk about that particular situation and other situations as well. But volunteering was a really good one for me. Now, on that, I want to say that I have also met a lot of people from different backgrounds here in Australia, from my own Brazilian community, from the Latin America community, and I know a lot of Brazilians who are overseas in other countries. And I know that we come to other places with that, we feel like a misfit. We feel, a lot of the times we feel like we are less off than the local people. And anyone who studies a little bit about culturally appropriate services or, intersectionality knows that we only know a little bit, like, maybe 10% of a person's reality. And even ourselves, we only probably aware of 10% of our own reality. So if we, look into the beliefs and the values and everything and the experiences we had in the past, a lot of the time, those will track back to something, a little bit below the surface in terms of our more unconscious programming as well. So what I suggest is that anyone who is looking for jobs, anyone who is new in Australia, who's still in that journey, I really encourage everyone to just open your mind to your own negative biases as well, where you are seeing things that that you don't have opportunities, you believe you don't have opportunities, where that's coming from you, and then look at where could the opportunities be. Ask questions about how could I change this? What could I do? Ask lots of questions. Ask yourself a lot of questions to try and understand where you may be holding yourself back. And then there are services like Dress for Success for women, who might want some help around coaching and some training around, applying for jobs and interviews and whatnot. And other services like the one you provide, who can help and can remember people of their strengths, of what their opportunities are, and so on.
It's really interesting, some of the things that you've spoken about there, Marcia, and I think, sort of circling back to the topic of the day around being a victim or not being a victim in that scenario, taking some responsibility and seeing only one point of view and that type of thing. What do you call being a victim? Say using a job search context, for example, what do you call being a victim versus somebody that's more proactive around, looking for a job?
Okay. I'm going to give you a situation that it might resonate for someone. You might just, like, if you're brave enough to admit to yourself, that might be a really good thing. Sometimes there is a payoff for us not finding a job. And that's one situation where we might be playing a victim when in reality there is a benefit for us not finding a job. Right? That's one. Of course, this is something that it's probably less predominant than other situations. The victim mentality, it doesn't start with the person. It's probably more, it comes from, back. It's like no one wakes up one day and decides that they want to become a victim. A lot of the time we have what we call the dreaded drama triangle happening in our heads. So we play parts where at times we are the victim, at times we are our own heroes, and at times we are our own persecutors. So we are our own worst judges. And that critical voice can really hinder our ability to become proactive and be the creators in our own life. So if you have a strong inner critic, you might be victimizing yourself. And, not looking for the right support, or not looking to take stock of your achievement, or perhaps not looking where your skills gap is, where you might need some training, where you might need to be flexible in terms of what you expect to get as the first job, because there is always a stepping stone as well. So I'll talk about some of what my clients, for example, come to me with an expectation that after our time together, they will know exactly what career they're going to do and exactly what job they're going to have. And I tell everyone that there is no end point in our life. We can only live like in the present and get what we get and make the most and make the best choice for the moment, and then we make our next best choice. So if we are, for example, too obstinate that we need to get a job in the automobile industry, because that's where I had the experience. I spoke to a gentleman who was convinced that that's what he wanted, because his identity was completely attached to his 20-some years of experience in that industry. And I asked him some questions in the messages in a LinkedIn, and he had thanked me for actually helping him think outside the square, because he had been looking for jobs for a very, very long time. And so in a way, he was being victimized by his own decision that his skills were only going to be valuable in that particular industry. Right? Or if you have a decision that you need to get that job, that the job you want is that job, and you can't look outside and you can't see any other opportunities, then you might be victimizing yourself. Open your mind, see what else is possible. Where is that internal voice in your head, bringing you to the situation where you're playing those roles? You've got a voice that is telling you that you're not good enough for something, another voice that tells you you are, victimized by the circumstances, where sometimes it's looking at what I call the triangle, the triangle of creation. It's the opposite of the dreaded drama triangle, which is when you have a challenge, you are a creator, and you either have a coach or you are your own coach, and you coach yourself through the challenges. So you don't buy into any of the other three positions. You're always looking for, how do I solve this problem?
I love that. I love that kind of analogy. Well, I think, what you've touched upon, like, there's a payoff somewhere. I mean, we all slip into victimhood in various ways, and just reflecting on my own behavioural thought patterns when you're talking, but there is always some sort of payoff, and whether that's staying right that the rest of the world is not going to give you a job, or staying in security that you actually somebody else will look after you in some sort of way, or all of those sorts of things pay off very powerfully, I think.
Yeah, I experienced that in my own life. When I arrived to Australia and I had my son was probably just about turning 10 months or 12 months, and I was starting to think about work again. And, the payoff could be to just be a stay-home mom and enjoy taking my son to the park and being supported by my husband. And I had to be really, like, I was as a Pilates teacher, I wanted to teach groups, and I was a bit scared of standing in front of big group and speaking English. So the first thing I did was started to observe classes in English so that I could learn the vocabulary that I needed to be a Pilates teacher. And even then I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared of standing in front of people and doing that. But I also looked at, so what is also the payoff if I decide that I'm too afraid to take this step? What is the benefit of that? If I decide that the fear is too big for me to overcome it, and we can go, like, you all probably know the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's a great book. I can't remember now the author of this book, but it's a true thing. And this book, actually, I highly recommend that anyone who is experiencing a lot of fear, particularly around employment and speaking English. And one thing I know about Australians is that most of them only speak one language. And they really admire people who even attempt to speak to more than one language. And also, when you are an expert in your own field, depending on what you're doing, what matters is that you do your job well, that you know how to do your job. So don't let the English be something that stops you from taking your first steps. That's one thing. Just to wrap up that situation I had, I overcame my fear. I remember the first class I did, I was doing some toe raises, so just going like, warming up the calf, the ankles, and I remember still shaking, like I was shaking so much in front of the class. I had about 25 people. I was covering for another teacher. And, after that, it's all history. I had my own studio for 5.5 years. I'm a senior Pilates teacher. Now I don't even do that anymore. It's like all in the past. I'm moving towards other bigger things. So just keep moving. Take the first step, then figure out what the next step, and then the next step. That's my recommendation.
Absolutely.
I think someone said that nicely. When you are climbing a mountain, don't look at the continuously look at what is left for you. Just take one step at a time. And this is also true in terms of sports as well. A lot of cricketers that I can relate to the analogies, that when they bat for a longer period of time, they're not thinking, what am I going to do in next hour? They're just thinking the next ball. I'll just focus on the next ball. Once that is done, then I'll focus on the next ball. I'm not worried about that. So I think that's a really profound. It's a simple way, but very profound way to look at things because A is that once you start to look at how much climb do you have to do, it may cause a sense of anxiety. Oh God, I've not even climbed anything. I've been doing it for God knows how many years, and I've still got a huge amount to climb. So I think that gap sometimes it energizes people, but sometimes it also has that effect of oh God, I've not done anything, isn't it? So one of the things that when I came on, we were talking with Caroline about the gratitude aspect of that and how much time do we focus on what we are not, what we don't have, but not focus on what we have. And that goes into pretty, in this COVID times, we have observed, a lot of the job seekers, people who've lost jobs. That's where some of them were thinking around, I don't have this and I can't apply for it. I don't have this, so I can't do that. But in that space, they're not thinking, or the thinking is clouded with, I don't have this, but not thinking what I have and thinking from resourceful perspective rather than that absence of resource perspective. Tell us a little bit more around that thinking because strength-based approach. I did my strength finder assessment when I changed my career in 2009, and that was one of the most important, $85 that I spent on the most economical, but it helped me significantly. I still use that to my advantage, this strength finder test. Tell us about that approach that and how can you instill that approach in your career, in your day-to-day life?
Well, gratitude is a huge one, right? Because there's something that when we are not in gratitude, we are often in scarcity. And so gratitude helps us tap into an abundant mindset as well. So being able to appreciate even the smallest things in life help us lift our own internal state to what I call above the line, right? So when we are not in gratitude, we are below the line. And below the line, we are usually moody, we are negative, we are sad, we are angry, we are frustrated, and above the line is we are positive, we are hopeful, we are, so gratitude, and even for the smallest things, like even for having a roof over your head, even for being able to tap into welfare payment, even for having a job that is an interim job, all of those things really help you raise your, I guess, vibration. And for those who don't think, that that's something that is real, I experienced that. It's one of the ways that I maintained myself above the line was by looking at everything that was working and everything I had in my life at the time when I was, receiving welfare payments, for example. I was grateful for the clients I did have. I was grateful for the welfare payment. I was grateful that I was able to get a rent as a single mom. I was grateful for so many things. So that's one piece. It just helps you. It helps your brain, because I think it's like, like when they say that for every for every one negative thing that someone says to a child, for example, we need to say 5 positive things. So my understanding is that the negative bias in the brain is so predominant that we really need to find 5 things for every one thing for us to kind of shift our attention to a more positive state. That's the gratitude piece. Now, the strengths piece, that how I utilize that, even before I was a strengths coach, it was by, okay, so if the thought is like, I don't have the skills, or I'm not going to make it, I can't get a job because I don't have this or that and that, is like looking at, what do I have? Where did I actually have small wins in my life? What did I do well in my life, no matter if it was professionally or personally, or, where was I resourceful? Even just thinking about being resourceful, where were you resourceful? And, a lot of people who actually are able to move away from situation in countries where the economy or the politics or, the situation is like, Iran or Syria, or, all the refugees that come across. I mean, these people have been extremely resourceful as well. So like everyone who left a country behind and moved to another place had been resourceful already in some ways, right? And had that perhaps to say, this country offers me better chances than my own home country. So make a list of all the things that you have been resourceful in your life and look at them, even without the strengths approach, even without the report. Right? The report will go into a lot more details. And what I can tell you as well is that I have found that with the strengths, the signature strengths, often we have one or two strengths that are where our blind spots are, where we are almost like too obstinated about those strengths, that we are, those behaviors become a hindrance. Sometimes those have to do with childhood decisions of who we had to be to belong in our family. And that's something that I actually help people overcome, if you want, to become aware, so that it doesn't become a hindrance, so they can invest in other talents that are more supportive. So I guess you can start with, how have I been resourceful? Where were my wins in life? What have I done well? And that's a really good starting point. A really good starting point.
Fantastic. So I've got a question. Did you want to take it?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. So Kit says, thank you, Marcia, for sharing words of wisdom on avoiding thoughts of becoming a victim and introspecting by being open-minded and asking what I could do and how can I change things, where am I holding back. My question is how to tackle confusions when you're asking questions to yourself, how to have clarity. I feel I've done analysis a few times, and after a while things don't work the way I want. I start thinking, I think doing the analysis wrong. So how to ask those good questions of yourself. And I think confusion often has to do with us learning early in life not to trust ourselves. That's my experience. That's my personal experience. I'm still doing internal work to overcome confusion, overcome those moments where I don't trust myself and my inner guidance. The confidence and the clarity comes from you knowing who you are and what you want and what you need to leave behind. And that's sometimes work you need to do with someone else to support you. So I hope that answers your question, because for example, this is something that, I have a therapist and I have a coach. I have two different people helping me. And sometimes in my life, I come to situations where I'm confused, and I almost always can guarantee that I have to go back to a time in my life where something happened that I need to go and revisit that part of me. And so I'm talking about inner child work sometimes. And that's part of the work that I do with clients as well, to learn, helping them, teaching them how to attend to those parts of them. Because we have parts of us, younger parts of us, that are protectors. And sometimes your confusion can be parts of you inside of your psyche, just kind of pulling you in different directions. And you need to understand what those parts are doing, who they are protecting, and what is the purpose, because there's always a positive intention behind that. Even procrastination has a positive intention. So there's positive intention in almost all the behaviors. That's the premise of neuro-linguistic programming, that all of our behaviors have a positive intention. So if we understand what that positive intent is, we can usually understand what the source of confusion is. So I hope that helps. Yeah, absolutely. And I think also to reach out and get help if you need it from various people. So,
and from me. And from me. If I could help, I'd be honored to help.
I think confusion is not bad. I think confusion just says that you are really engaged in the conversation. You're really thoughtful about that. Right? I don't think confusion is bad at all. I'll give you a very, very, very recent example. We are working on on a funding proposal right now at my work. And 2 days back, I was absolutely confused about how that is going to, what would be our point of difference, what would be our narrative, and everything else. And what we had to do as a team is to take one step. So let's just tackle one question, and that opened up the door and said, okay, let's go to the next question. And I think in 2 3 hours of our team meeting today, we covered so much ground on that one, that now we've got a real clarity of what do we need to present in order to be successful in receiving those funds. So I think confusion is not wrong, but if confusion, if you stay there for a longer period of time, then it becomes really, really difficult to really kind of comprehend the situation. So my suggestion is that confusion is like a what do you say? You're driving into mist. You have to slow down, right? You can't see for the 100 meter. If you can see 10 meter, just continue. Just go for 10 meters. You'll see another 10 meters. And I think we have a we all the time we seek so much clarity. We want clarity, and we are not really comfortable with those moments that we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do, and we feel very uncomfortable because that's what we've been told over a period of time. That, or even the self-help also continues to say, you got to have the clarity. You got to have this. You got to have this. You need to have this. I think that also really bogs down people, because then also a lot of us go into invalidation. Oh God, I'm always like this. I always get confused, and then just then you're rethinking the same thing over and over. So, okay, hopefully that helps. Take one tiny, tiny, tiny bit step.
I agree with you. I think that clarity isn't like one final product. Clarity is a series of iterations of clarity, small things. But if the confusion is extreme, if the confusion is so debilitating, it could be sometimes because you have had very high expectations of yourself, or because you are worried about the expectations of other people. So when it's if it's a decision around your career, like we said, just take the next logical step. Take a step that feels good. I always, there's 2 rules for me, okay, around decision making, like 2 rules. That's my 2 rules even when I'm confused. Does it feel good? That's the number one. Does it feel good? If it feels terrible, if it feels scary, don't do it. It has to feel good. That's the number one. Yeah, the second one is like, am I afraid because I am way outside my comfort zone? Way outside my comfort zone. Because there is always a bit of a mix of fear and excitement in situations that stretch us, but there is a situation where the stretch is so big that it's beyond. And so that, like, when I navigate through those, decision making with those 2 things, and I look at what happens if I take those steps and if I don't take those steps, it usually becomes more clear. So, don't expect to have, like, I love the analogy of the fog. Yeah, because it doesn't get crystal clear, but as you get to know yourself, you get to understand why you'd make decisions the way you do. Because you're driven by your values, you're driven by your talents, you're driven by your strengths, you're driven by what matters to you.
Makes absolute sense.
Excellent. Marcia, that's pretty much it. That's the time that we have. It's been absolutely fascinating to catch up with you, and also to bring you to our listeners as well. So if anybody wants help, we'll put Marcia's detail on the LinkedIn live chat, but you can Google the name Marcia Teperman and you will reach to Marcia, and you can please reach out to her because she's absolutely fantastic at what she does. So Marcia, once again, thank you very much for being part of our show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcia. It's been absolutely fantastic. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the bell notification. Even give us a thumbs up. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, please follow the #CareerCare Package. And Naish, what's happening tomorrow?
So tomorrow is our 192nd episode, and we are talking to an author, Cassandra Goodman, and she has written a book. If I can pronounce, I still have difficulty in pronouncing fidelity, so I'll try that again. So the book is Self Fidelity or Fidelity. My apologies for that, but it's a fantastic book on self care and self focus. It's a book that is receiving great reviews, and we are going to talk with Cassandra tomorrow 3 p.m. and tomorrow would be our second last episode before we do a LinkedIn live marathon on a Friday, where 32 Avengers plus two directors will be there, and looking, we're really looking forward to that show. So please join us tomorrow 3 p.m. Until we see you tomorrow, please stay safe, look after yourself and your loved ones, and bye for now, everyone.
Bye, everyone.